Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Solution Seekers. I'm Kelly. Um, when it starts with a sigh, you know it's going to be all bad. I'm attaching two videos. I'm going to let that speak for itself. But how the hell can our elected officials Mitch McConnell just sends everybody home for the holidays? You know, a lot of people are going without. I don't know if you've seen my previous one, but I'm going to add it to it. 25,000 people were serviced at in Austin, Texas, at a food bank, and yet it was like 30 million people on the risk of becoming homeless, losing their places. 22 million additional people, 22 or 32. I think it's 32 are on the verge of losing their houses. You know, people are having a hard time putting food on the tables. You know, here in California and LA specifically, we're on lockdown. So once again, people's wages are in effect, people's livelihoods are in effect, but yet they can't do one of the main purposes, which is pass a fucking budget. But let's get some judges on there. Well, what about December 11th? Our government's going to run out of money. What about that? But you can bail out, or you can give tax breaks to all these fucking corporations. It seems like you can do everything else for everybody else except for the people who truly make this fucking government work. There used to be a time when we, the people, were the government. Well, that's all up for interpretation, but where do we go from here? Do you know? I sure the hell don't know. I'm all out of options in it. What's my fucking solution? My solution is to keep on being me. There's two things that are going to happen. I'm going to stay black and die. And anything outside of that, I don't know. But, you know, and let's keep hope alive and, you know, and try to help out those who are really struggling out through these unprecedented times. And that's the only fucking solution that I can see. And hopefully help somebody out who's struggling right now. That's the purpose of much of what I do. You know, thankfully I was able to impact some people last week just making them some fucking brownies. You know, they are bomb brownies. They are crack brownies. And I think I'm going to start raffling some off for these people who are more engaged. And there's a coffee cake too. So I don't know. Just thinking about something for the future. Probably the next couple weeks. But anyway, first video, AOC. Second video is some stimulus conversations that were had on Bloomberg. Due to Copyright Acts of 1974. I'm just using this for educational purposes, so therefore I'm entitled to use this. Thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please smash the like button. And if you haven't done so, subscribe and turn on the bell notifications for all the videos so you don't miss out on nothing. All right, I hope everybody has a blessed night, and I'll talk to you later.
We are here convening in Washington. And just a day or two ago, the Senate Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, decided to break the Senate. And he broke the Senate as there are thousands of people in Texas lined up for food lines. He broke the Senate while hospitals no longer have beds to house the sick. He broke the Senate and dismissed the Senate while 30 million Americans are on the brink of eviction. He dismissed the Senate when every single day, when we go back to our communities, people are asking us, where is there going to be help? Is there going to be a second stimulus check? Are we going to get the resources that we need? He broke the Senate. And in breaking the Senate, we are abandoning our people. Thanksgiving is around the corner, and there are millions of Americans that won't be able to afford a meal to eat, that don't know if they'll be kicked out of their home, that are unsure if they're going to have to quit their job to care for their child. And we are having entire bodies, and the Senate prides itself as one of the most deliberative bodies. They abandon them. This uncertainty in food reflects food hardship across the country. 5.6 million households with children struggling to put enough food on the table in the last 7 days. Landlords filed at least 43,500 evictions in 17 major cities from March until September. An estimated 13.4 million adults living in rental housing today, nearly 1 in 5 renters were not caught up on rent. Small businesses don't know if they are going to survive or exist in a month, in a week, in January. We cannot afford to wait for a new administration or another election or a political state of play. We need to get people help now, and the Senate broke. They broke. We are supposed to be here to work for everyday people. We are not supposed to be here to work for political donors or political favors or the powerful. We are here to serve the people who are most vulnerable all the way up to the top. But we start with the people most in need. Our country is going hungry. On the week before Thanksgiving, and the Senate broke. I don't care what party you are. It is an abandonment of our responsibilities as elected officials who are charged with acting in the public trust. I was surprised to hear so many Republicans now concerned about how we're going to pay for it or using other people's money. But the Senate Majority Leader wasn't concerned about other people's money when he authorized a $4 trillion leveraged bailout for Wall Street in March. He wasn't concerned about where that money came from. He wasn't concerned about how we were going to pay for that. It is only when we are talking about relief for working people, for children, for families, for parents, for education, for healthcare, that all of a sudden we can't pay for any of these things. But when it comes to tax subsidies for private jets, we've got the money for that. When it comes to the endless appropriation towards more and more military spending, when we aren't even technically in growing elements of war, according to some people, we have money for that. But we don't have money to feed our own kids. We don't have money to educate people. We don't have money to provide health care. But we have money for private jets. We have money for tax loopholes for yachts. We have money to incentivize stock buybacks. We have $1 billion to invest in research and development for a vaccine, which was proudly invested in and a good use of public funds, just for pharmaceutical companies to take these publicly developed patents, or publicly developed drugs, rather, and then sell them back to the public at no discount so we don't even get a return on this investment. How is that fiscally responsible? So we are living in a world and a state of play in our governance where the party who is eager to help subsidize private jets somehow can't find the dollars and the cents to get people a $1,200 check. It's unconscionable, and it's wrong, and the Senate broke. And so I'm just rising today because it's extraordinarily difficult to represent a working class district not a private jet district. And to go home every week, just as I'm about to do again, and feel as helpless in this body because the majority of its members and the majority of the Senate can't seem to want to get it together and get people the help that we need, and the Senate broke. So this is what I have to do. This is what we are resorting to. Speaking to an empty room because the Senate broke. So if there's anything that I have left to say, is that I want to know if there's anybody out there that's listening, is that if you are a working family, if you're struggling to get the food that you need, if you feel like you are on the brink of eviction, we see you. We see you. And what I ask for the Senate, and what I ask of our Republican colleagues in the Senate, is to act as if you were the one that was going hungry. Act as if it is you getting evicted from your house. Act with that urgency.
Well, as businesses shut their doors to curb the virus, there is still no financial aid coming from Washington. Let's now bring in Bloomberg News congressional reporter Eric Wasson, who has reported extensively on the ongoing stimulus battle. Eric, thank you for joining us. Your latest reporting shows that the Treasury Secretary is willing to restart stimulus talks with Democrats, and he's doing so by proposing tapping money earmarked for the Federal Reserve. Now, the Fed has now agreed to return that money. How unusual of a proposal was this?
Well, it was in some ways very much expected. The CARES Act, which passed in March, pretty much set the expiration date of the end of this year for these monies. But at the time, it was not expected that the pandemic and the economic consequences would be lasting as long as they have. In fact, the White House had been talking about a V-shaped recovery. That didn't materialize. And Jay Powell, in responding to Mnuchin yesterday, said he would prefer to have these lending authorities available in case they're needed in the spring. So now he's returned that. And Mnuchin called Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, today and talked about perhaps dangling this money in front of deficit hawks and saying we could use this to, in some ways, pay for or make up for a new round of stimulus for the economy that actually gets out the door. The Fed had not been really employing these Main Street lending facilities. However, that is not really necessarily getting much traction with Democrats so far.
Of course not. How much money are we talking about here in terms of clawing back some of the money that was earmarked for the Fed? Because the two sides are so far apart on how much money is needed for stimulus.
Well, look, it's less than $500 billion, but when you add in the PPP leftover money of $123 billion, it comes to about $580. But one thing I point out in the piece in the Bloomberg, under congressional budget rules, you can't unspent loan money can't be used to pay for other spending because the CBO assumes that those loans would be repaid back. So failing to make loans that would be repaid back doesn't earn you anything. So in many ways, it's a bit for show. It won't really allow the deficit score to go down. Democrats are not really budging. They're continuing to talk about a $2.4 trillion bill. McConnell's still talking about a $500 billion bill. Perhaps they have some flexibility, but we're not yet seeing real talks on a stimulus being rejoined yet.
Yeah, so the gap is as wide as ever. Now, we know talks between the two sides have been on hold for weeks. And this week, Pelosi and Schumer on the Democrat side wrote to Mitch McConnell asking him to return to the negotiating table on stimulus talks. Does that mean that the GOP has the upper hand here in any discussions that do take place?
Well, it's hard to see who has the upper hand. With the Biden administration coming in, admittedly, the GOP is not acknowledging that that's going to happen. And the Senate, the control is still very much up in the air. I think it's probably likely the GOP retains the Senate, but it's possible the Democrats take it. If they had the Senate in hand, they would indeed have the upper hand, be able to pass a major stimulus after January 20th, and have it signed into law. But there's a separate issue here. After that letter was sent by Pelosi Pelosi and Schumer. There was a meeting between staff on a separate omnibus bill. That's to keep the government funded after December 11th when funding runs out. And there was some hope by Pelosi that this would turn into a stimulus discussion, but McConnell's people were not having any of that, and that remains on a separate track.
Very quickly, Eric, you've been covering the ins and outs of Congress for a decade now, and it's tempting to say that this particular Congress is more dysfunctional than ever. Is there any reason to think it won't get any worse after the new Congress is sworn in?
I think it may very well do so. You know, there's a lot of momentum on the right to declare the Biden presidency illegitimate in this attempt by President Trump to say he's had the election stolen. So, you know, we very well could see a blockade in the Senate of Biden appointments and him being unable to even fulfill his cabinet. We're looking on the lookout for that. But if that really gains steam, there could be a lot of incentives for Republicans to stymie everything, in which case, you know, we would see very little get done.
Yeah. Eric Wasson joining us from Washington with a big reality check. Thank you so much.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.
We saw those long lines in Dallas today, people waiting for food. They were waiting and waiting and waiting, so many thousands and thousands. Look at all those cars just waiting to get some free food because they're struggling right now. Millions of Americans, and they're suffering financially. We see no stimulus deal in the works right now. Why is that? Why can't Republicans and Democrats realize, as I've often said, you know what? You can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You got to help these people. You got to pass this legislation right away.
You and I were both afraid of this very scenario, Wolf, which is we're in a lame duck session, and it's harder to get big bills passed when some members of Congress are literally packing their bags. They're in their offices, you know, like trying to sort out their affairs because they're going to be leaving in the next number of days or weeks. But that should not impede Congress, because at this point, the issues are so well known. They've been negotiating over them for months. Chuck Schumer came out and said, please, Mitch, let's pass a bill. Outgoing former President Trump tweeted that he wanted to see a bill. So at this point, it really is mystifying why they can't get a deal hammered out between Speaker Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, because the parameters have been so well defined. They've been negotiating in theory for months.